It's less than 7 days ago. It's actually not 7 days ago yet. On Tu B'Av, it's going to be a week since Tisha B'Av, which is going to be on Wednesday. That means Tu B'Av. From Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av till Tu B'Av, those 15 days, those 7 days are a interesting time because the Chachamim tell us that this is a time of tremendous amount of joy. That there's no greater simcha than Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. And the truth is, so much of what's in that sheet that I gave you is really a little bit of the Talmudic background as to what actually happened on Tu B'Shvat. I'm not going to do that for you. You should know that by now. So you have the sheets. You can do that on your own. What I want to do with you is let's talk a little bit about why I think Tu B'Av manifests itself now. You know, you have holidays in Judaism, and they don't happen in a vacuum. Everything happens for a reason. Like Tisha B'Av is a Memorial Day because we remember the destruction of the temple. And therefore, Tu B'Av itself, it's a day of when, there was the tribes would intermarry again. There was actually a time in Jewish history where if you were in a particular tribe, you would not marry out of your tribe. These are practices that unfortunately are still practiced in some sects of Judaism. They believe in what I call same-sex marriage, right? It's really bad. And that's still going on today. And this is something that was abolished, or at least rabbis thought was abolished 2,000 years ago at the end of the destruction of the Second Temple. We thought that same-sex tribe marriages were coming to an end. Tu B'Av was a happy day because same-sex tribal marriages stopped and they started intermarrying. That was the word they used, intermarrying with other tribes. It is a time where the young maidens of Jerusalem would go out and they would share their clothing, the wealthy with the poor and the poor with the wealthy, so that when men were going out and looking for that special person with a twinkle in her eye and a sparkle in his tooth, they'd find each other, the eyes would lock and meet, and no one would know if their background is that of material or that of high-ranking family and so on and so forth. We just looked at people for who they were, something that unfortunately we have a hard time doing today still. And it's funny, when you keep actually reading through some of the things that the Talmud brings down as far as what makes this day, a joyous day, it also speaks about how it's the day that the Jews stopped dying in the desert. There were 40 years in the desert from the time that the spies slandered the land of Israel on the 9th of Av. That for exactly 40 years, Jews were dying, and the way it worked was on Tisha B'Av, everyone would sleep in their grave. They'd bury their own grave. And then every year, for 40 years, 15,000 people would die. And this, 50 times 40, you got your 600,000 Jews end up dying. By the 40th year, on Tu B'Av is when it stopped. That's when they realized that it stopped. They stopped dying on Tu B'Av. So, is there a theme that we can find from these ideas? Its correlation to Yom Kippur, Tu B'Av, Day of Happiness, and is there any message that is, I guess, hidden in the story of Tu B'Av that you and I can find today and find meaning from it? So I'm going to try to share some ideas that I think are meaningful, and of course at any point if anyone disagrees with anything I say, that's okay. Just wait until the end of the video because I just don't want it on tape. I'm just joking. You could disagree with me at any point you want. But I would argue that Tu B'Av is misunderstood because when we think about Tu B'Av as a holiday of love, we're only thinking about it in a one-dimensional framework. We're only thinking about it in terms of the relation between man and woman and nothing else. While Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, was a destruction in all three relationships that is literally a helicopter flying right above us right now. It's always see, I'm about to say something profound that someone here needs to hear, and there's a massive distraction that always happens. Okay, so I apologize for that, but I'll try to be more engaging. There are three primary relationships that were ruined on Tisha B'Av: the relationship with the self, the relationship with the other, and the relationship with the Almighty. Okay? On Tu B'Av, we often think, this is a great day. It's the holiday of love. This is the day where we talk about only the relationship between man and the other and not about man and himself or man and God. But in reality, there is no difference for me between any one of those three relationships because they all require exactly the same power, the same muscle to operate a relationship. You need to have the understanding of how to flex your relationship muscle. So what does a relationship muscle look like? Can anyone tell me? is there a difference in how one relates to themselves, how one is able to understand themselves, be patient with the self, criticize the self, and their ability to build relationships with others? And the truth is that really a person's heart, mind, their analytical self is something they carry with them in every arena that they're in. There's no way of separating how I relate to myself and the world around me, because it's a lens. There's a lens I have, a subconscious lens that allows me to experience my reality, my world. Okay? Now for some people here, they're looking for relationships that are superficial. It's only about what we call chitzoniyut. It's only about the externalities. It's only about what I see, right? Or it's something that's predicated on something else, like I need someone who's rich, I need someone who's educated, I need someone who's, you fill in the blank. Whenever you say I need something that is X or Y, whatever it is, that love, okay, is dependent on X or Y, and the second that X or Y is no longer there, the whole relationship falls apart. That is the most superficial of all relationships. That is the weakest of all relationships. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't marry someone that you're attracted to. Of course you should be attracted. But at the same time, be mindful that all external things that we want and need, as far as it being in the forefront of what we're looking for, generally is the lowest level of relationship that you can be looking and building with someone else. Okay? Then on a second tier, there is a relationship which is personal, right? About the individual, right? Who that person is, what their value, what do they bring to you in your life? The experiences, it's being empathetic, it's about opening to someone else, it's about being kind to someone else, caring for someone else. That's a higher level. And the highest level of relationships that you can possibly build and create is one that is based on values. As a matter of fact, I've mentioned this here before, that before my children start to date, I will sit down with them and I make them come up with a list of their 5 core values that they're looking for in someone else. And then my wife and I will, we'll go out with them and we'll each write our own 5 values. We'll have 15 values on the table, and then we'll edit it down to the 5 most important that we all agree on. I want you to know that recently, a good friend of mine, Charlie Harari, his son just got married, and he told me that he heard me say this to someone else outside in shul once. He said he stole it, and he said if it didn't have those 5 core values for his son would not have gotten engaged. His son would not have been married right now. So it actually works. So what are 5 core values? Well, they're different for different people. But what does it mean to be able to evaluate someone based on their values? And how do I shift myself from, while at the same time appreciating that a person has to be attracted to someone else, someone that has to be drawn in by somebody else? There's got to be there's the chitzoni, external beauty. There's also the person who they are and wanting to share with that person. But greater than that is the actual values. Why are values so important at the end of the day? Why do values determine whether or not a relationship will most likely succeed versus the other first 2 steps? Yeah. What's that?
They guide you.
Okay, they guide you to what? So, looking at someone's beauty also guides you. Like yes, no, that's also a guide. How is that guide different than the other guides that you have? One second, say that again.
To be the best version of yourself.
Okay, why is that the best version of yourself? Okay, fine. So the idea of having a core values is something that inspires you and motivates you. What else?
Everything else fades away.
Everything else is here and gone. I had a rabbi who told me a story about. This is actually a really weird story. I haven't thought of the story in a long time. You just remind me of it. I don't know why. But he told me a story of how he was once at a Sheva Barachot in Brooklyn, and his wife came up to him and said, "Oh, listen, I want to introduce you to this woman. She was Miss America, right?" And she's thinking like, "Why would my wife want to introduce me to like this, this beauty queen, whatever it is?" And she's like, "No, you have this. I want to show you this." So he takes her through the Sheva Barachos, whatever it is. It's in a house. Finds this other room that this lady is sitting in, and she's like really old. She's like in her late 80s. And she's like, this woman, introduces her, and he, later she says that woman was Miss America. He's like, why do I need to meet her? What was the whole point of that? He's like, I wanted to show you what beauty looks like at the end of life. Like, you didn't choose someone who was a beauty queen, but for all people, beauty eventually fades. And if your relationship is built on or predicated on the fact that you're with someone that is externally beautiful, know that for her, even for this woman, she's saying how hard it was. Like she had to have all this makeup, and she clearly had things done to her lips and like her cheeks, because you get so lost in your looks that becomes an expression of your identity, right? And even when you're older, you can't stop aging, right? You could try your best, but it becomes very apparent and obvious. And when you build a society of superficial, people that is only looking at external things, we end up devaluing human beings. So Judaism looks at individuals first at their core values. I'm more interested in being with someone whose values are aligned with mine. That comes first. That's more important. That trumps whether or not they're supermodels, whether or not they're, how much money they're making, or how educated they are. I'm not saying you shouldn't have those things. Again, I'm just saying that you have to put your priorities in order. Okay?
But I think it's like,
Yes.
it's all about the attraction. Let's say it's like beautiful people that have more values than just beauty.
Beautiful people have more what?
They have more values.
They have more values?
Just beauty.
I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that when it becomes only chitzoniyut, when it's only chitzoniyut, it's a problem.
Whole relationship only based on chitzoniyut?
Yes. Yes.
For how long?
For a long time.
Wow, I don't know. Really? Maybe men can do that.
I know women that can do it too. I know women. Don't throw men under the bus for this one. I know women that are just as superficial as men, and men who are just they're evil. It's just they go both ways. They don't split anymore. There was a time where I would say that this is true for most men and for most women. Today it doesn't really matter. There's no more stereotypes anymore. The whole world is a big, what we call hameen, a big chalent. So like it doesn't really matter to me. Like if male, female, it's all the same thing. Everyone's guilty of doing the same thing. Bottom line is, if I showed you 3 pictures, okay, of 3 guys, you're going to be most interested, without knowing anything about any of them, you're going to be most interested in the guy that is the most handsome. Right? But it's very possible the guy who's not as handsome, he's not ugly, but he's just not as handsome, might have everything that you actually need, as far as values, as far as human being experiences, as far as intellectual, compatibility, and so on and so forth. So, but I'm just saying, I'm not, you're right, you can't. The point that I'm making is that for most of us, is that we'll be attracted to that which is externally attractive first. That's our nature. So I'm saying that part of the growth that we need to do as individuals is recognize that we're pre-programmed to evaluate things in the most, I'm going to say the most superficial level, the most base level. Right? Therefore, part of becoming an adult is recognizing that my programming is only about the externalities first. And again, I'm not saying that that you shouldn't be attracted to the person that you're marrying. I'm just saying that should not be the priority on your list. That if Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the year, was about Sirat Chinam, it's about baseless hatred, which is not creating a space for another human being. And Tu B'Av is this holiday that is supposed to be the happiest day of the year, right? Then what was that shift that happened in 7 days, right? If the 9th of Av was about the destruction of the temples because of our inability to build relationships with other human beings, then what was the tikkun? What was that fixed things? What was that happened on Tu B'Av that changed the reality for our people, that turned it into a simcha? What was it? What do you think happened? Well, the stories tell for themselves. The stories are all stories about how we became open to the potential in other things. Other tribes marrying each other, people, different socioeconomic classes sharing what they have, so we destroy all socioeconomic classes. Stories of people who are open themselves up to other potential and possibilities. That's how you rebuild the temple, right? If you're talking about the destruction of the temple, right? I get that. That makes sense to me. Yeah. If I can't, how can I have God in a world with humanity if I can't recognize the spark of the divine in each person? If each person is created something called Tselem Elokim, in the image of God, and I can't recognize that because I'm so obsessed about my own wants and needs, and I can't create a space for somebody else, then how's God going to be here? When you open yourself up to other people, to other potential, other possibilities, what you're actually doing is you're allowing another person's godliness, so to speak, their spark of the divine, to shine through a little bit. You recognize that in them. I'm not saying that's for you, but at least be open to it. I can't tell you how many times people say, no, it's not for me, not for me, not for me, not for me. They know nothing. It's just an outward appearance. never said hello, never said goodbye. What's that? I understand. But sometimes my point is that I get it. I know there's attraction, but sometimes attraction needs motivation, right? Sometimes attraction needs a different perspective, a different set of eyes, right? Sometimes attraction needs, you just need to be sitting in a different place, a different corner. You need a different light to see another person. If we first focus on who the person is at their core, right, maybe the way you'll see them is a little different. That's all I'm saying. That's what I suspect. And I want you to know that we are a product of our society. And therefore, if you have never been trained in how to evaluate another person, that's what you're going to see. My kids, who were, thank God, are really good kids, they don't have the Western values when they're looking at people to marry. They're not using those values. I'm not saying that they're gonna, they're first looking at the external parts of a person, right? Or the internal parts of a person, excuse me. The external parts, meaning the core values, not the, what I meant is the inner parts of a person, the core values of a person, okay? Why are they doing that? Because they did not grow up in a world where they could have watched Lion King or like Frozen, and you have all those beautiful songs of people singing with each other and finding true love and sharing true love's first kiss, right? All these BS ideas that pollute our minds with ridiculousness, right? But we have that. Like, am I going to be swept away by my Prince Charming? And it's nonsense, right? It doesn't work. And I've said this here before. I actually wrote emails to Disney asking them to change all their films with the ending where it says happily ever after. And I said, please change it. It's not true. It's a bad message. I would prefer it if it said they live happily ever after a lot of work, because that is true, right? I got one response, but it wasn't. They're not taking it seriously. They thought I was true. Oh, now it's now it's worse. Now it got worse. I need more people. Maybe if I started a campaign to let's change, whatever. Anyway, the point is that the values that we have, again, because we live in an external generation of always looking at things, projected, everything is about perfection. The counts of body dysmorphia that has happened in the last 10 years, it's gone up like 2,500%. It's an obsession with outer appearances, an obsession with how people see each other, an obsession because we're pre-programmed to think, well, that's everything, and it's not. God forbid, no one should ever think that there's a tremendous amount of depth to a person that's much more important than their external beauty and how they project themselves. So, Tu B'Av for me is the greatest day of the year. It's the Simcha of all Smachot, because it's the day where we're actually able to see a person's truest expression of themselves. That's what makes this day so amazing. That's why this day is going to be like a massive holiday. This is why in Judaism, this is what we call the day of love, right? What is love? Love is the desire to give unconditionally, altruistically. That's what love is. Love in Hebrew, ahava, okay, comes from the shoresh word, the root word hav, which means to give. And the way in which you actually build your ability to love someone, okay, is by giving to them. That's it. That's all it is. Relationships are not built by only external things. The external things makes it easier to connect with someone on the outside. But at the core of a person, right, what makes a relationship is how much you're willing to invest in that relationship. I'll give you an example. If you were to find, for me it's all about the Bible, right? So if you were to find one place in the Torah that spends the most amount of time talking about a marriage, where would you find it? Yeah. Right, so the place where you see the most of it is what? Yitzchak and Rivka, right? There are a total of 67 verses that talk about Isaac and Rebekah getting married. Now the truth is that there's only one verse that says they got married. That's it, right? So 66 verses were all about the preparation of what was necessary to get them married. Abraham setting up Eliezer, his trusted servant, to go out, the Shadchan, to find a suitable match for Yitzchak, and then the whole entire test of Eliezer praying, and then of him finding someone, and so on and so forth. All those steps and stages were all part of the process, right? Only one verse for their actual marriage. Now, what's interesting is that out of all the relationships of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? the relation between Isaac and Rivka has the shortest dialogue between all of the spouses in the patriarchs, right? Shortest dialogue, almost no dialogue, very little. We know very little about their marriage. Now, I'll tell you what, the other thing we know. We also know that Isaac was the only one that did not have another wife. That he was only married to one woman, whereas Abraham had two, and Jacob had four, right? And we know that Abraham had lots of troubles with his wives, because when you're married to more than one, you're in trouble, right? You're in trouble when you marry one. You're in more trouble when you marry two, right? And Yaakov married four. Ooh, he was in real trouble, lots of trouble all the time. And therefore, the Torah tells us, by the way, without saying it, that the ideal relationship is a monogamous relationship, right? In French, how do you say love? What? Oh, that's right, amore, right? So what's the root word of that word, amore? Do you know where it comes from? Where does it come from? It comes from the Latin word, yes, but the Latin word actually comes from Hebrew. It comes from emor. You know where it comes from? Emor el Aharon, right? Tell Aaron to give the children the brachot. Emor kanim, yivrach Hashem yishmerecha, those psukim. So the amore, actually, the root word for love in French, comes from the word emor, to tell over Aaron to bless the children with love, be'ahava, with love. Starts with amore, amor, right? There's a very deep relationship there between love and this idea of a priest whose responsibility is to give to the people, right? Be in a position where you're giving back to the other. How many of us are in a relationship and the only thing we're thinking about the relationship is what we're taking out of the relationship? Now, to be honest, God bless you, to be fair, I'll say this. I just officiated my 226th marriage a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. Soon by you, Bezrat Hashem, right? And every couple that I've met with, they're only getting married for one reason alone. You know why? Because they selfishly believe they're going to benefit from being in that relationship. And I tell this to all the couples that get married. I'm like, you're getting married for one reason alone. You're getting married simply because you believe you're going to take from this person and benefit from that taking. And if you didn't feel that way, you didn't think that way, you would not be in this relationship, period. They're like, okay, like what? Like, it makes them very uncomfortable. I'm like, listen, I'm not telling you not to get married, but just know that if you stay or keep your relationship built on this paradigm, you will be divorced in 7 years, because that's the 7-year itch that most relationships in America end within 7 years. The divorce rate in this country is at over 50% already. It went down for the first time right before COVID, a few points, but the only reason why it went down in 2019 is because less people got married that year, not because less people got divorced that year. But I suspect, just knowing my friends who are lawyers and who are practicing divorce law, I know you can't even get a divorce lawyer right now in New York. They're packed. It's like a waiting list. Good luck getting one, right? I suspect those numbers are worse, right? And they're just going to get much worse in time, right? Like in Japan. In Japan, you have less people getting divorced because you have less people that get married. 45% of all men over the age of 35 years old in Japan have no interest in getting married, right? 80% of them would much rather have a relation with a robot than with a human being. Okay, it's some crazy number. It's insane. And if AI and other technologies continue to emerge the way they are right now, I see relationships breaking down even more and more as time moves on. Right, so it's just going to get harder and harder. The challenge with the phone is that the phone took away our ability to actually learn how to build relationships. Because in the old days, you watched good old-fashioned TV, which had some type of values in it. But before that, you watched people's relationships. You watched your uncle and your aunt and your siblings and their relationships, and you learned about real relationships. You learned about the trials, the tribulations of building a family, the hardships about making things work, the effort, the energy, the sleepless nights, the constant work. Any relationship. Bezrat Hashem, I'm going to celebrate my 25th anniversary this September. Right? It's a quarter of a century. It's a long time. And I could tell you that I love fighting with my wife. Right? I love fighting especially I love winning, actually, more than I like fighting. But I could tell you that our relationship is built on two individuals who are very different. Some of you know my wife, we're very different people. We see the world very differently. We express ourselves very differently. We express our Judaism very differently. But yet, we spend a lot of time figuring out how to make this thing work. Not that it's horrible, it's always falling apart, but anything that's meaningful requires a constant effort in making it awesome. Like you have to take a car, you got to take it to the garage, you got to fine tune it, you got to build it, you got to do something to get it, to keep that thing maintained. A relationship is no different. This is true with your own relationships. How many of you are involved in building the relationship with yourselves, maintaining what it means to be you? The most difficult person in the world to actually know is yourself. But I know myself. No, you don't. You don't really know yourself, right? The people around you know you very well. Sometimes maybe even better than you know yourself. That's why it's so important to have honest friends. But Tu B'Av is the day, this one day of the year, which kind of segues into another part of the year. The Kabbalists tell us that Tu B'Av the month of Av is a month of reversal. I'm not sure if you know this, but Hasidim prefer not to do weddings at the end of the month. So the last 2 weeks of the month is considered to be a bad omen to get married because the moon is waning, right? So we don't want to do anything with Mazal where we're seeing the Mazal close. So they much prefer to do it from the first of the Rosh Chodesh of the month, the first of the month, until the 15th. Those 15 days are the most misugal times for getting married, right? You don't want to do anything later because it closes. You want it to go when it's opening, where it's waxing, right? When it's actually growing, expanding itself. When the moon is coming out, that's when I want to go ahead and do my Mazal stuff. But in the month of Av, it's the exact opposite. In the month of Av, from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tu B'Av is actually a bad time, right? As a matter of fact, we know that if you have court cases in the month of Av, you're supposed to push them off. You're not supposed to buy new property, no business deals. Do whatever you can to kind of like delay it. Don't wait. But from Tu B'Av until Rosh Chodesh Elul is a reversal. The Mazal changes, and it's the only month that it happens in. And I have a suspicion as to why. It changes because Tu B'Av represents the beginning of the end of the summer. It represents the brightest time of the year, where there's a tremendous amount of light and clarity in the world, right? And that clarity is beginning to kind of like fade away. And therefore, there's something about this expression of like the equinox, the sun presenting itself in its full power, its full glory, us having the clarity of being able to make the right choice, the right decisions, and therefore we're kind of like tackling onto that. We're not looking at it from the perspective of the moon, we're looking at the Mazal this month from the perspective of the sun, the constant march beating of the sun that gives us the most clarity. Whereas the moon, you never know where it's going to show up next. Okay? That's why I believe Tu B'Av is a special time of the year. Now, what does it mean for me and for you? Well, that means Tu B'Av is a time where you're supposed to kind of like clarify what it means to be you. Clarify what it means to what you're really looking for. Because I have a suspicion that if I asked everyone in this room to go into a corner, take out a sheet of paper, and write out what do you think are the most important core values you're looking for in a person, I think most people would struggle at articulating 5 solid ones. I think that most people have a hard time expressing what they're really looking for at their core. That if I actually probe them a little bit, that they might change their answers. They don't have clear answers, and I think this is that's a problem, right? What is the modality of building a relationship? If dating is exactly the same thing, I'm doing exactly the same thing over and over again, and I'm not getting the results. Maybe I need to make a change in what I'm doing when I'm dating, right? Because if we're not asking the hard questions, the uncomfortable questions, we're most likely we're doomed to make the same mistakes over and over again. And when we think about time as Jews, we think about it in terms of, different opportunities, different potential, different aspects of energy that's able to express itself and make changes for ourselves. Okay, so of course, every day is a good day to daven for shidduchim. Every day is a good day to go ahead and and have this consciousness of like, yeah, I'm dating, I'm opening myself up, and so on and so forth. But there's certain times where there's a little bit more clarity in the world. Okay, it's hard to be single at the end of the summer when all your expectations were about finding that special person to settle down with, and therefore there's a certain expression of pain, I would say, that or unhappiness that is found in people who are looking for shidduchim at this time of the year more so than other. It's always painful. It's always, but it's something that's worse now. And therefore, if you're not tapping into that particular power of prayer, if you're not tapping into that particular ability of, feeling uncomfortable, unhappy, uncertain, then you're missing out on understanding how time works. In Judaism, we believe that every single person only lives for one day. One day is 120 years of your life. How do you behave if you knew that every single day was your last day because you only have one day? What does your day? What does your life look like? What do you do? How do you spend your time? Where are you investing your efforts and your energy? Where are you building? Where are you growing? What are you doing to make things better, greater? If you only have one day left, what are you doing? How does that day work? If you believe that you only have one day left, right, your whole entire persona of how you use your time changes, and then your world around you changes. The things that become important or unimportant change as well. That's what Tu B'Av is. Tu B'Av is about getting people to make a shift, right? Open yourself up to other potentials, other possibilities. Open yourself up to different ways of thinking, different modalities, different people, different places. Don't be stuck doing the same thing over and over again. That's the lesson of the sun. The sun does not change, right? And therefore, we're tapping into the power of the sun. It doesn't change. But on the other hand, we know that as Jews, the mazal that governs us is not the sun, it's the moon, right? The moon is our particular fortune. It comes from the moon, and the moon is always changing. The moon is never the same. You have no idea where to find the moon tonight. You don't know if it's in the east, in the west, in the south, in the north, right, left, here, there. It's always different. It's always in some place different. And the moon always represents this power of ingenuity, right? Of a power of renewal, a power of finding creativity, a power of breaking out of a system and a cycle. Whereas the sun is a constant, fixed, marching, monotonous thing that happens over and over and over again. Every single day the sun rises in the east, it always sets in the west, and it does not change. It's always exactly the same, right? That is part of what this time is. So we're elevating. In the next month is called Elul, the month of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, the month of a different kind of love, the love between man and God and man. So if Tisha B'Av, or the month of Av, is the month of the Father, the month of where I am able to go ahead and recognize my failings and seeing the uniqueness in other people, then the transition of the month is recognizing the beauty of that person, and that allows me to see my connection and my ultimate beauty with God the Almighty, right? They're all correlated. So let's just take another step back, okay? Let's. Does anyone have any questions? Am I going too fast? I feel like I'm losing everybody. Let's make it more simple, okay? How many people here don't want to get married? Don't raise your hand, right? Okay, good. I imagine that everyone here wants to get married, okay? If you had to do one thing tomorrow that moved you one step closer to getting married, what would you do? What would you do? What's that? Know yourself more. Okay, that's part of it. So how would you get to know yourself more? Meditate?
I'm not answering that.
Got it. Okay.
Things that make me happy.
What's that?
Do the things that make me the happiest.
Do the things that make you happiest. How does making the things that make you happiest get you one step closer to marriage?
Because you're just focusing on yourself. You love yourself.
Okay, good. So let's define what that means. What does it mean to love yourself?
To be content with who you are.
Okay, good. Definitely, 100%. Just got to appreciate who you are, 100%. You got to love that, the 100%. That's definitely part of it. I just want to make sure we're not confusing knowing yourself with loving yourself, because knowing yourself and loving yourself are similar, but they're different. To love yourself means that you're doing everything you need to do to be the best version of yourself. You're dieting, you're exercising, you're making time for yourself, you're meditating, you're taking nice walks in the park, you're taking in the beautiful, summer air, you're traveling a little bit, you're seeing the world, you're doing you, right? But just, you got to be careful that when you're when you're in that place of doing you, that you don't get lost in the world of you, right? Because I've seen so many people like, it just becomes about them again. It's just I have to know myself, and therefore I have to make myself happy, and therefore my whole existence becomes about only caring for me, right? But I'm going to suggest something a little bit controversial, okay? And I think this is what the Talmud looks like. By the way, when you're done later, look at the sheet, because my class will mean something different to you when you read the sheet, okay? When the girls were sharing their clothing with the other girls, the wealthy girls were giving their fancy dresses to the poor girls, and the poor girls were giving their not so fancy dresses to the rich girls this way. What was that really about? Why were they doing that? They're going out, they're wearing white dresses, they're going out, and they're telling the guys, don't just look at beauty, pick family, and look at the pnimiyut, the inner parts of a person. What were they really doing there? What's really going on there? Why were they doing that? I want to tell you that the step that gets you closer to getting married is not only caring for yourself, but it's also creating a space to care for somebody else. When, there's meditation has become like a big fad over the last 10, 15 years. And there's been a lot of focus on self-awareness, right? Mindfulness meditation, my favorite. Anyone here do a mindfulness meditation? Anyone go to a mindfulness meditation session? Nobody? Okay. So mindfulness meditation is really a meditation which allows you to kind of like slow your brain down and to allow you to focus on what's happening inside of yourself. Right? It's a very inward focused meditation, right? Which is the antithesis of what Jewish prayer is. Tefillah, Jewish prayer, is about being otherly focused. Every single one of the prayers in the silent Amidah is in the plural, right? Heal us, save us, forgive us. There's no singular. Every blessing is in the plural. I'm never thinking about myself. I'm always thinking about myself through the lens of the people around me. And therefore, like the higher consciousness level of prayer is when I am able to be considerate of the wants, the needs of the people around me. I believe that's what Tu B'Av is. You want the tikkun, you want to fix things, stop thinking about yourself. Don't not take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, but create a space where you could actually care for somebody else as well. I'll tell you what ends up happening. What ends up happening is that when you start caring for other people, you actually learn more about who you are. I could prove this to you. I'm married for 25 years, okay? I'm a very intuitive person, and I used to think that I knew myself really well. My wife is a constant reminder of how little I know myself. She points out things to me that are, I would say, imperfections, unsavory parts of my character that I would never know were present if it wasn't for her watchful eye, right? And the same is true for her. There are parts of who she is as a person that she's unaware of, that she would never be aware of if it wasn't for, my hawkish ability to point out all of her amazing flaws, right? Her unique flaws that make her her, the things that I love most about her, right? That kind of growth only happens from people that are able to be committed to the process of building a relationship with someone who's different. There's no one in the world that you're going to find that is like you. You're never going to find everything that you want. And the people that think they have it, they're living in La La Land. They'll wake up later and realize they don't have it and they're in trouble. Okay? They may make it work. Okay? I think that if you look at second-time marriages, third-time marriages in this country, the divorce rate's at 72.5%. There's only have like 27% of people that are married in long-term relationships in this country. And 50% of those people are unhappily married. Okay, so you only have 13% of people in marriages in America of people that are actually in a happy relationship. Now, what do those 13% of those people have that makes their relationship successful, happy, and so on and so forth? Do they fight? The answer is yes. Do they argue? The answer is yes. But the thing that they have more so than anyone else is first at the forefront of that relationship is a commitment to the person in that relationship. That's first, paramount. Who loves you more than anyone else in the world? Who? And out of your parents, who loves you more? What? No, I didn't say God, your parents. Yeah, but God does love you more, but I don't know what that means exactly. Right? But which one of your parents loves you more? I would argue that most moms, there are circumstances where that's not 100% true, but I'd say most moms love a little bit more. And the reason why they love more is because they have given to you more. Right? Because love is about an exercise in giving. The more you give to something, the more you love it. Okay, the more you invest in something, the more you appreciate it. Mothers carried you for those 9 months. Guys, men just make the donation, they walk away, and the woman does all that other job on her own. And that extra giving is why she cares more and loves more deeply and profoundly, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, how do we learn to love our parents? It's not an accident that in the last 50, 60 years in this country, that most young people, okay, are very comfortable giving their parents away and putting them in what we call old age homes, what I call foster care for parents, right? Why do we do that? Because we're comfortable letting someone else deal with our parents because we really never learned to love our parents. This is how it goes. Your parents raise you, they provide for you, they give to you nonstop. Okay, 21, 22, you graduate college, you move away, you get a job, you're making money, you're moving out. Can you come back sometime later, late 20s, early 30s, you get married, and you're still living far away, but you come back when you need babysitting. You're too busy raising your own children to really spend time building a relationship with your parents. Now your parents are really old, and they need a lot of help, and you just don't have the time to help them because you're too busy doing you. So it's much easier to put your parents in an old age home and not worry about it. Feeling good that at least you're spending the money to take care of them. This is the best facility that's out there. Best care. When in reality, the best care in the world that a parent can receive most of the time is from a child. They don't want somebody else's care. But if you've never put yourself into a position where you're actually giving back to your parents, you can never really love them. It's just the way it is. Simple, very simple. Love isn't automatic. Love is a choice. Okay, it's a choice you're going to have to make. And therefore, you're going to choose the kind of person you're going to love. You're going to choose that person. The choice is what makes that love special. All the other things, they come and they go, they fade away. The choice, as long as that choice is real, and you're the kind of person that's going to be committed to that choice, that, my friends, is the beginning of an amazing relationship. Couples will come and go. You meet all kinds of people. And the reason why those relationships end is simply because it's just a lack of clarity as far as what you're investing in. I won't invest in this relationship, and therefore I won't make the relationship work. When you have two people that choose to be in this relationship, they're making the choice to be in that relationship, make the relationship work, that's when things change. Okay, I'll end with one last true story. There's a student of mine who was dating a guy from Buffalo, but his family's from Moscow. And she's from Long Island, American, apple pie, Cracker Jack, kind of girl, baseball games and whatever it is. And his family was born in Moscow, came to this country in the late 80s, and made their way and so on and so forth. And he was when they were dating, he was offered this very lucrative job in Moscow, and they would have to, part of this was her agreeing before they were getting engaged to actually live in Russia. Okay, now that's a scary thing to ask a girl to do. Like just to get up, some guy you met, like you've dating for like 5-6 months, and you want to get engaged, you're just going to move to Russia. Like it's one thing if you're going someplace nice, like France or Italy, but like Moscow. So she says to me, she comes to me, she's like, Rabbi, do you talk? Like, my parents are not okay with this. I'm like, why not? She's like, my parents think I'm crazy, like I'm going to Russia, so that's going to happen there. They could just close the government, there could be a war there, people get missing all the time. I'm like, okay, like these are all like crazy stereotypes. I said, but have you committed to the idea of being married to this guy yet? She's like, no. I'm like, then of course your parents are going to bother you because you're not committed yet. Once you're committed to this person, and once you commit to the person, then the place doesn't matter anymore, and your parents won't be bothered by it anymore. Right? Parents can sense when you're in a relationship that does not have commitment yet. You'll find all kinds of external reasons that get in the way of building the relationship because commitment's not there. That's fine. But the way it works is first make the commitment, and then everything else will follow. So here she was. She took my advice. she was engaged 2 weeks later, right? And her parents stopped bothering her about it. Because once they saw her commitment to the process, to the person, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it anymore, right? And if worst case scenario would happen, I'd have to make them a call and like just kind of threaten them and ask them to back off a little bit, which I've done for some people before as well. Sometimes parents don't know how to. Sometimes parents are overly involved in their children's dating life, and it actually destroys things. Doesn't help things ever. The last person in the world you want to speak to about dating are your parents. Do you know why? Your parents are biased. No matter who you bring home, that person is bad, and you're an angel. She's not good enough for you. That person, that family, and they come up with 1,000 reasons because you're perfect, right? And I know I have kids, and my kids date, and I'm like, just you want to settle? That's your choice. You can settle, but that's as far as I'm going to go, right? I'm not going to go beyond that, right? Because ultimately, I know my kids will make their own choices. I don't want to get in the way. But listen, we're adults here, okay? And you're in a position where you have to make your own choices. So if you're going to ask me about what Tu B'Av is the day where you find the ability to see the greatness in another human being, someone who's different than you, someone who comes from a different community, a different family, and you open yourself to the process of being committed to letting another person in. I'm not saying you have to marry that person. I'm not saying you have to go ahead and be committed to marry the person. I'm saying be committed to the process of allowing something different in your world. And maybe in that merit of you finding something different, you might find something called love, true love. Right? The divisions we've created amongst communities about what we think a person should be, it should have. Like I have a girl, my daughter has a friend from Florida who's dating, and she comes into New York. She dates in New York. She dates New York. There's a bigger pool of guys here for her. So, she says to me, my best friend is Sephardic, my roommate was Sephardic, but my parents won't let me date Sephardic. I said, why not? She's like, we're culturally too different. I'm like, I think that your parents have bought into stereotypes, and that they're not giving you good advice, but your parents will listen to them, and you're still young enough where you can get away with it. But I disagree with that. Is it easier to marry someone from a similar community and similar backgrounds? The answer is yes, 100%. But that doesn't mean that that's the only place you can find someone that can match, build, and create with you. If you have someone whose values are aligned with you, irrespective of their community, irrespective of their background, you'll make it work. That's the key. Everything else, it doesn't matter. Like you saw my big fat Greek wedding, right? Right? It doesn't really matter. Like you could have the Greek person and that, the white bread American who doesn't have any flavor in their life, marry someone with spice and pizzazz because their core values were the same. That's why that relationship could work. Do they come out the part 2? Oh, do they get divorced in part 2? Okay, good. I didn't see it yet. I don't know. All right, anyway. All right, I want to end with the following beracha. My bracha to each of you is that you are able to use the special power of the sun that's coming up in a couple of days to bring a new feel of light into your world, a clarity that gives you the ability of recognizing very deeply who you are, what you're truly looking for, and maybe also at the same time give you the ability of recognizing someone different that you can build a relationship with. And in that process of building and creating that commitment to that person, finding a higher level of love. Wishing you an amazing week and an awesome summer. Thank you so much, everybody. I know it's late. Thank you so much. All right, questions, comments? Now's your chance. The quality of your life is an expression of the quality of the questions you're going to ask.